All right, so we're diving deep today into agile leadership and how it can really like reshape a company's culture.
Yeah.
We're looking at this article, how agile leadership can fundamentally change work culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of hooked already by this idea that leadership is way more than just talking the talk, you know?
Yeah.
It's got to be about like actually doing stuff to shape the company's whole vibe.
Absolutely. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's something that so many leaders struggle with.
Yeah.
They want that, energetic and innovative culture, but they don't always have the tools or the know-how to actually make it happen.
Right.
And that's, I think, what's so great about this article. It
Yeah.
gives us a framework, a really practical one to actually work with.
The article starts out with a real zinger. Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
It's so true.
We've all heard it.
All right.
But what does it actually mean for us, day to day?
It's a reminder that a company's culture, those values and behaviors that everyone kind of shares, can really make or break even the most brilliant strategy. Oh, yeah. Leaders are the architects of that culture. Whether they realize it or not, their actions, their decisions, even their unspoken attitudes, they shape the entire environment. There's this great quote by Edgar Schein, who's an expert in organizational culture. He says, leadership and culture are two sides of the same coin.
I like that. Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
So it's not just about like having these fancy mission statements hanging on the wall. It's the everyday stuff.
It's the everyday stuff,
Yeah.
exactly. Andrea Tomasini defines it as the sum of all those accepted and expected behaviors within an organization.
Right.
And it's the leader who really establishes the norms for those behaviors.
So fascinating.
Yeah, whether they know it or not.
The article then goes into this really cool story about a telecom company
Oh, I love this story.
that was struggling to keep up with the times.
Yeah.
Right? They were kind of stuck in this really rigid top-down culture.
Right, which was really stifling innovation.
Yeah. And then they did something kind of brilliant with sticky notes.
They did. It was such a simple thing, too. But so smart. They went directly to employees and asked them, what do you need to be more collaborative, to be more agile?
Interesting.
And they took all that feedback, wrote it down on sticky notes, and put them up on a giant wall, like right in the middle of the office. But here's the genius part. It wasn't just a static display, They turned that wall into a live Kanban board, showing everyone exactly how they were addressing that feedback in real time.
So they were literally moving sticky notes from like to do to done.
Exactly, for everyone to see. And that simple act sent such a powerful message. We hear you, we're taking action, and we're all in this together.
So powerful.
It was a visible, tangible commitment to change.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating is it wasn't some massive, complex initiative.
Right.
It was a simple, visual way to shift the entire company culture towards collaboration and action. It makes you think, how could you apply this in your own work? Maybe not literally with sticky notes, but how can you show that same commitment to change in a way that everyone can see?
What a great question to consider. Now, the article also introduces this leadership agility model with its different stages: expert, achiever, and catalyst. Could you break those down for us?
Absolutely. The model, which was developed by Bill Joyner and Stephen Josephs, suggests that leadership skills, they evolve in stages.
Okay.
Think of it like shifting gears in a car. At that expert level, leaders excel. They're really good at using their technical expertise to solve problems. They're the masters of their craft.
So they're like the go-to person for like specific task, right?
Yeah.
But what happens as they progress?
Then they move into the achiever stage. And here they start to focus more on results and delegating tasks effectively.
Okay.
They understand how important teamwork is, getting buy-in from others.
So they become less about doing everything themselves and more about like empowering their teams.
Exactly.
Okay.
And finally, we have the catalyst leader. These are your big picture thinkers. They've got that broad strategic vision. They understand that culture is absolutely crucial for achieving those long-term goals.
And I imagine they really value the people on their teams.
Yes.
Not just seeing them as like cogs in a machine.
Absolutely. They emphasize empathy, coaching, creating an environment where people feel valued, supported. They see their team as assets, not just resources.
I love that. Assets.
Yeah. Now, where do you see yourself on this spectrum? Right now, I mean.
Oh.
It's a good question to reflect on.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We're all on a journey.
Yeah.
Understanding where we are now is the first step to growth.
Exactly.
Now, the article then gets into 5 key capabilities of Agile leaders
Yes.
that directly shape the culture. And we're going to start with situational awareness.
Right.
Tell me more about that.
This is all about adaptability.
Okay.
Agile leaders, they can seamlessly shift between those expert, achiever, and catalyst modes, depending on what the situation calls for. Think of it like having this leadership toolbox and knowing which tool to use for which job.
I like that.
Right.
So this makes them adaptable,
Yeah.
which in turn, I imagine, creates the company culture that values like flexibility and continuous learning.
Exactly. And then we have visionary orientation.
So it's more than just having a vision.
Yeah.
It's about like bringing everyone on board with that vision.
It's about communicating that vision clearly, inspiring the team to work towards it, and understanding that culture is what makes that vision a reality.
Okay.
They're patient and persistent, in building a culture that supports those goals.
It's like being the captain of the ship and also making sure that everyone's rowing in the same direction. And also you're rowing too.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, now let's talk about people-centered leadership.
Okay.
This one really resonates with me.
Yeah.
It's about treating people like people.
You got it. Agile leaders, they have high emotional intelligence. They're empathetic, they listen well, and they genuinely care about their team's well-being. They invest in coaching, in mentoring, in helping people grow, both professionally and personally.
So it creates this feeling of like we're all in this together
Yeah.
and I'm here to support you.
Exactly, and that creates a culture of trust and respect, which is essential for innovation and growth. Now, next we have navigating VUCA.
Navigating VUCA, it sounds kind of intimidating. What is VUCA?
It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity,
Okay.
which is just a fancy way of saying that the world is a crazy, unpredictable place, especially in today's fast-paced business world.
Yeah.
Think about a sudden shift in market trends or a new competitor popping up out of nowhere, or maybe a global event that disrupts supply chains.
Right.
That's VUCA in action.
So how do Agile leaders handle all of that chaos?
They embrace it. They understand that they can't control everything, so they focus on adaptability and resilience. Okay. They see challenges as opportunities for learning and growth.
So instead of like freaking out when things go wrong, they're like, okay, what can we learn from that?
Exactly. And they encourage their teams to experiment, take risks, learn from their mistakes. Which brings us to our final capability, psychological safety.
Okay, so tell me about that.
Agile leaders, they create a culture where people feel safe to speak up, to share their ideas, and even to challenge the status quo without fear of, punishment.
It's so important. If people are afraid to speak their minds, I mean, you miss out on so much creativity and innovation.
Absolutely. Psychological safety, it's the foundation of a truly collaborative and high-performing team.
Okay, we've covered a lot.
We have.
Now let's talk about this competing values framework. The article mentioned it.
Okay.
What is that all about?
This framework was developed by Kim S. Cameron and some colleagues. It's a really handy tool for assessing and shaping your workplace culture. And it really focuses on 4 key cultural archetypes: collaborate, create, compete, and control.
So it seems like each of those could have like pros and cons.
Right.
Depending on like your company's goals.
Right.
Which one is the best culture to have?
There is no single best culture. It's really all about balance. Each archetype has its strengths and its weaknesses. The most successful organizations, they find a balance between all 4.
Okay.
And they kind of adjust that mix based on their industry, their goals, even the personalities of their team members.
It's like a cultural balancing act.
Exactly. And the framework helps you identify which archetypes are most dominant in your workplace, and then make deliberate choices to nudge the culture in a more balanced direction.
Okay.
So, for example, a super competitive culture might be fantastic for, let's say, a sales team, but maybe not so much for a research and development department that really thrives on collaboration and creative thinking.
That makes sense.
Right.
So how would you describe the dominant culture in your workplace using these archetypes?
Ooh, that's a good question.
It's something to think about, right?
It is. Yeah, it's something to think about. Because we all play a role in shaping that culture around us.
Now, the article makes a really important point about culture change.
Yeah.
It's not a quick fix.
No, it's not. And the article compares it to an experiment, which I think is a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
You're trying something new. You're not entirely sure what the outcome will be.
Right.
And there might be some unexpected side effects along the way.
That's such a good way to frame it. So What's the key takeaway here?
Yeah.
For those of you listening who may be uh, feeling a bit overwhelmed by all of this.
Well, I think the key takeaway is that changing a culture, it takes time and patience.
Yeah.
And a willingness to kind of learn and adapt as you go.
Yeah.
It's not about like these big sweeping changes or, making some grand announcement.
Right.
It's about those small, deliberate actions.
Yeah.
And just being open to seeing what happens.
I love that. It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to go it alone, With the right leadership skills and a bit of persistence, you can make a real difference in your workplace.
Speaking of journeys, should we start to maybe wrap up this deep dive into agile leadership?
Yeah, I know there's always so much more we could explore.
Right.
But, we want to make sure you walk away with some solid takeaways.
Yeah.
Things you can actually, put into practice.
Okay, so let's recap what we've learned so far.
Yeah.
Agile leadership is so much more than just buzzwords.
It is.
It's a powerful way to really reshape your company's culture and make real change.
We've also seen that culture isn't this like mysterious force out there. It's really the sum of everyone's actions and behaviors.
Yeah.
And leaders have a huge influence on that.
Absolutely. We talked about those different stages of leadership,
Yep.
expert, achiever, catalyst,
Right.
and how agile leaders can actually move between those modes depending on what the situation calls for.
Yeah.
Kind of like choosing the right tool for the job, like we were talking about.
Yeah. Exactly. And we can't forget about those 5 key capabilities of agile leaders.
Yeah.
Situational awareness, visionary orientation, people-centered leadership, navigating VUCA, and fostering psychological safety.
It's like a roadmap.
Yes.
For becoming a more effective leader.
Absolutely. And then we have that handy competing values framework.
Yes.
To help us really assess and shape the culture around us.
Now, here's the million-dollar question for all of you listening.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing all of this, what small experiment could you try this week to nudge your workplace culture in a more positive direction?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right.
Maybe it's something as simple as, publicly acknowledging someone's great work.
Yeah.
Or actively asking for feedback from your team. Remember those sticky notes?
Yeah.
That simple visual act of just asking for feedback and then showing how you're addressing it, it made a huge impact on that telecom company's culture.
Or maybe you take a step back and you really listen to your team's concerns.
Yes.
Without judgment.
Exactly.
Or make a conscious effort to create a space where they feel safe to share their ideas, even the kind of out there ones.
Yes. The point is, even those seemingly small actions, they can create a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Never underestimate the power you have to influence the culture around you.
And remember, it's a journey.
It is.
There will be bumps in the road.
Of course.
But with persistence and the right mindset,
yes,
you can really make a difference.
Absolutely.
So keep exploring these ideas, keep experimenting, and keep learning.
Keep learning.
Who knows? You might be the catalyst.
You might be.
For a truly incredible cultural transformation.
Yes.
Within your company.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive completely, let's touch on something that we discussed earlier, the competing values framework.
You're right. We talked about those 4 cultural archetypes.
Yes.
Collaborate, create, compete, and control.
Right.
And we kind of left everyone with that challenge of thinking about which one is most dominant in their own workplaces. I know I've been thinking about it.
It's a great exercise for all of us. And remember, it's not about labeling your workplace as one type or another. It's about recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of each archetype and finding that right balance for your specific team.
Exactly. Like we were saying before, a highly competitive culture might be perfect for a sales team that's trying to hit those aggressive targets.
Exactly.
But it might not work so well for a research and development team that needs more collaborative and creative environment.
Yeah, and here's another important thing to keep in mind. Culture isn't static.
Okay.
It's constantly evolving.
So it's like a living, breathing thing.
Precisely. It changes, it grows over time, and it's influenced by all sorts of things. Leadership styles.
Right.
Market conditions, even the personalities of the people on the team.
That makes sense.
Right. And just like any living thing, it needs the right conditions to thrive.
Yeah.
That's where agile leadership comes in.
It's about creating the right environment.
Yes.
For that culture to blossom and adapt.
And being open to adjusting your approach along the way.
Right. Remember, culture change is a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. It's all about constantly experimenting, learning from what happens. Making adjustments as you go. And of course, celebrating those wins.
Yes.
Along the way, no matter how small they might seem. Because even tiny shifts in behavior,
Right.
they can add up to big changes over time.
So for our final thought, let's circle back to something we talked about earlier, the concept of VUCA.
You mean that volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world we live in?
Yes.
Yeah.
We talked about how Agile leaders are comfortable navigating VUCA.
Right.
But what if we took it a step further?
I like where you're going with this. What if instead of just surviving VUCA,
Yes.
we actually use agile leadership to create a culture that thrives in it?
A culture that's not just adaptable and resilient,
Yeah.
but actually excited by change and sees it as an opportunity.
That's a challenge worth embracing. It's about shifting from that fear of the unknown to a sense of curiosity and a thirst for learning. Imagine a workplace where people aren't intimidated by uncertainty,
Right.
but they see it as a chance to innovate, to experiment, to push the boundaries of what's possible.
That's the true power of Agile leadership.
Yes.
It's not just about managing change. It's about leading change
Yes.
and creating a future that everyone is excited to be part of.
That's where we wrap up this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the world of agile leadership and culture change with us.
But don't let the conversation end here.
No.
Head over to our website to find links to all the resources we mentioned today.
And we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
Share your thoughts and insights on social media.
Yeah.
Tell us about your own culture-shaping experiments.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Keep diving deep.
So we were just talking about that idea of kind of shifting from surviving VUCA to thriving in it.
Right.
It's like seeing uncertainty as an opportunity instead of this scary thing.
It really is a powerful mindset shift. And, agile leadership is, I think, really well suited to building that kind of thriving culture.
How so?
Well, if you think back to those 5 key capabilities we were talking about earlier, situational awareness, that helps you read the environment, right? It's always changing. Visionary orientation, that gives you that North Star, right? To guide your decisions when things are uncertain. People-centered leadership. That makes sure everyone feels supported and empowered, so they can navigate through those rough waters.
And of course, navigating VUCA is a capability itself. Right?
Yes.
It helps you turn volatility into like a learning experience.
Exactly. And then finally, that psychological safety. That means people feel okay speaking up, sharing their ideas, even if they're a little worried. That's crucial when things are changing so fast.
So it's like when you combine those capabilities with this mindset shift that we've been talking about, seeing uncertainty as an opportunity.
Yeah.
You start to build a culture that's not just resilient, but actually like energized by change.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's about encouraging curiosity, experimentation, where people feel like it's okay to try new things, learn from their mistakes, adapt as things evolve.
So instead of getting stuck in that fear of failure, it's like they see it as a learning experience.
Exactly.
They're not afraid to kind of challenge how things have always been done and come up with new solutions.
And that's what's so great about this agile culture.
Yeah.
It's built for speed, flexibility, and that continuous learning, which is really, really important in this complex world that we live in.
So what would be like the one key takeaway you'd leave our listeners with today? What's the thing they can do, starting to build that more agile culture in their own workplaces?
I would say start small. Don't try to do everything at once. Pick one thing, one area where you can try out some of these agile principles. Maybe it's that sticky note idea, gathering feedback and showing people you're taking it seriously.
Right.
Maybe it's just focusing on building those relationships with your team. Make a space where people feel good sharing their ideas.
That's really great advice. It's like taking small steps, but being intentional about it.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe you'll start something that really transforms the whole culture.
It's about those little things that add up over time.
Well, we really hope you've enjoyed this deep dive with us.
Yeah, it's a topic we're really passionate about. We think it can create these amazing workplaces where people feel valued and empowered and, excited to come to work.
Remember, you have the power to be the change you want to see.
You do.
So go out there and experiment, learn, and grow. Let's build a future of work that we can all be proud of.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive.
We'll see you next time.